Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Welcome to A Coffee with Karen. This is episode 2, Cup of Positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. So each week we will be discussing topics ranging from current affairs, health, business, self-development. And each week my guests will be sharing their views on the topic from either a mental, a physical or a spiritual perspective. So today's show doesn't sound very positive, but it is something that I feel that we all need to be a little bit aware of. When we hear things like this, if you're anything like me, you want to live in your own little bubble, and maybe I want to sort of bury my head in the sand. But it is something that is going on, and we do need to be aware of it, and we need to look for solutions for dealing with it. So although the subject is a little bit delicate, it is for a positive outcome to look for solutions. So my guests today, well, I'll let you introduce yourselves, guys. So first of all, Chris, if you'd like to explain to the viewers a little bit about who you are, what you do, and just a little bit about your story.
Okay. Quickly snapshot. So I'm a health and wellness coach right now, and also I'm an accountant as well. I am a survivor of childhood adverse experiences, which basically means I was mentally, physically, sexually abused as a child into my adolescence, and I've still got an ongoing criminal justice case at the moment, which has been sort of on and off for 5 years now. I use my lived experiences to raise awareness and also to work with a niche group of clients that are struggling with moving forwards because of the trauma that they've gone through in their childhood and adolescence. And I do that through a mindset, nutrition and fitness, holistic kind of way, really. So that's what I do. And it changes with each client and it changes every day. So, you know, life is never the same. It's always varied.
Mm-hmm. And well, you touched on a point which, that is definitely the way I see everything, is this holistic approach, because there's never going to be a one size fits all. We are all different in the way that we respond to things that have happened to us in the past. And so then the solutions are going to be varied. And I love the way that it isn't just the mental side of it, which I can only presume is a huge part of it, which will have a knock-on effect to the physical. But then you are focusing on the physical as well. And I know that our next guest also touches on the spiritual side. So Bev, if you could introduce yourself and share with everybody a little bit about what you do and about your story.
Hello, I'm Beverly Webb and I'm the founder of the Step Forward practice, and I know Chris very well, and obviously Karen, we've met a few times as well. And like Chris, I am also a survivor of childhood abuse, so emotional, physical and sexual. Mine was in the close family and also a close family friend. And I was also, and Chris and I have known each other for some years now, and so it's a topic we talk about for similar reasons. We want to raise awareness and to enable these conversations, because silence exacerbates it. It doesn't go away. But by being able to talk and share through a lived experience, hopefully we enable other survivors to know that they can come forward. But like yourself, Karen, the conversation we were having earlier, like, what do I say? I don't want to upset anyone. It enables you to have that safe space to say, that's okay. We're here to answer any questions you have, but most importantly, for proactive prevention of children today. The only difference is with Chris and I, we've lived in similar areas, talk about sliding doors and yin and yang. I also was a looked after child. Now, for me, that was a blessing, because I went into care at the age of 4 to 10 and then 13 to 16 or 15, then I was fostered, and then I ended up in a hostel at 16. And like Chris, we both lived on our own from early years. So we've had similar but different experiences. And so recovery is very, from my point of view, I have this belief about in recovery, it's not just about talking about it. It's about we separate our physical, we separate our mental or neurological reaction and our emotions to survive as children.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's about in recovery being able to recognize and ask ourselves what it is that we're doing to keep safe. So sometimes, what are our triggers? Because we can't stop triggers. But it's saying, okay, I recognize this is what has happened to me emotionally or physically or going on in my mind. And when I say mind, neurologically, so what do I need? And sometimes that is about asking that inner child, what do I need? The spiritual side of me, I remember the first time somebody told me, you need to learn meditation, it's really good for you. And that's where I come from. Don't tell me, ask me. Because now I understand where that person was coming from. But at that time as a survivor, oh my God, it was probably one of the biggest triggers I had. And they had best intention, but you're asking me to shut my eyes in a room. He happened to be a man at the time. And I said to him, I'll do it, but please don't move from your chair. And he said, no, I won't move from the chair. And I went, I mean it, do not move from your chair. And this is where communication breaks down and why opening these conversations is great. Because he started to get me to close my eyes. He was starting to get to me relax. And in meditation, you relax and you're in a waking sleepness. Well, I'm in that all the time as a survivor to a certain extent, but I don't let go. And what he did, he uncrossed his legs and suddenly I jumped.
Triggered.
And he said, I didn't move from the chair. And I said, but you moved. And he said, how did you know I uncrossed my legs? And there's my safety mechanism.
There you go. So you weren't in a full meditative state. Something was there as a protective being, almost waiting to save you.
Yeah. And that's what normally happens.
Which actually links back to our first episode last week when we were talking the Great Mars debate. And this is something we're trying to sort of encourage people to just be a little bit thoughtful and have a bit of compassion about, because you don't know what's going on with other people. Now, the whole thing of even putting the mask, that could have been a trigger for a past traumatic experience. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I don't wear one for that exact reason. I can't even bear looking at people that have got a mask on, because it's almost like it shut people's faces down. They don't want to look at you, or when you look at them, they're so covered up. There's no one smiling from their eyes. So I'm walking past people unmasked, obviously, saying, hello, how are you? And they're like almost frightened to say hello back. That's what I'm getting at the moment. And it is horrible.
Yeah.
And it triggers me big time.
And that's an instinctive response. So as a child, you learn to watch, you hear the words of what's being said, but when somebody says to you, I'm not angry, but their body is showing they're angry, or you can't read their face, then you're reacting. So I also, like Chris, can't wear a mask that closes me in. I feel like I'm being gagged.
Yes.
Also, same with my glasses. So that means I'm claustrophobic. So I have found an alternative, and I found a clear mask that goes up halfway and it's under my chin. That way, I feel that I'm giving myself clean air, and for me, it works. I've had a few different comments from people, and I just say to them, it's my choice to wear this, and it's okay.
So there is a system out there. So that's brilliant. Yeah, that's exactly what I use personally as well.
It enables us to smile, and it's a fundamental part of communication. We learn that as babies, how to communicate. We read faces. That's why babies touch our face, first of all.
Right.
And that's the biggest trigger at the moment, going out.
Right.
And I've had to work hard on that.
It totally makes sense, because it's the whole trust thing. Now, so is this what I'm getting from both of you two? What was your childhood experience? So Beverly, you've just said, so you were in the foster system, is that right?
So I lived with my parents and family until I was 4, and then taken away by the police. And I still remember that. People think that you can't remember, but you can when it's traumatic.
Right, of course.
Then I was being
memories are linked to emotional triggers, right?
Absolutely. So then I was sent back regularly to stay with my parents, and my father was my abuser.
Right.
So then when we were 10, when we were being sent home as a family, whoop-de-doo, that's fantastic. But no, I was being sent home to my father. And at that time, the family friend had started abusing me as well. So when we were 13 and we got the opportunity to go back into care, that was I'll never forget the first day we went back. It was brilliant. We were safe. It's what we wanted. But then there's that other part of you that's really difficult because I've left my mum and dad. I'm not part of a normal family.
Okay, so conflicting emotions there. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And what about you, Chris?
My mum left home when I was 7 because of my dad was having affairs with other women, but one particular woman in particular who became my stepmother. I was with my mum and my dad were in a domestic violence relationship. My dad then married this woman a couple of doors down. They were in a domestic violence relationship. My dad then got put away in 1981 for sexual offences. I then went back to live with my mum, who had remarried, and they were in a domestic violence relationship. So we just went from one house to another, which was very violent. And the abuse happened in every single household to varying degrees. And as I said, we're still trying to get some kind of justice through the criminal justice system at the moment. But my mum unfortunately died in 2017. So, the longer this goes on, then other people we might lose them along the way as well. And, justice is never going to be got when people die on you.
Absolutely. So do you think, so with all your work, so you work to help people overcome these traumatic experience, do you see a pattern where is through kids going to care, or is it sort of even, from their own family, or what? Do you see any kind of pattern with the children?
Who's going first?
We're both ready. Go on, you go first this time, Chris.
So I work as a consultant to the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, okay? And they're looking at institutional responses or lack of that are causing children harm and are causing children to be abused. Most of the research shows that a lot of the abuse takes part in the family home. So it's intrafamilial abuse or within the family environment, like extended family or friends of the family, people that the family trust. So if it ain't the family, it's extended, trustworthy figures within that child's life. However, there are many children that are abused in all kinds of settings. So every institution that you can think of, there's abuse happening. Has happened, is happening. So you've got child sexual abuse, you've got child sexual exploitation. So there is nowhere where abuse is not happening. There is not one person or community or in this society where abuse is not happening, and a perpetrator can be anybody, and that's what's so scary.
Right. What about you, Beth?
Yeah, for anyone listening, and please be aware of what you're hearing as well. Look after yourself, because this is a subject we can't avoid. Because like Chris said about institutions, the biggest institution we have that we know and trust is schools. So generally, when we talk about institutions, people think about care homes, about fostering. But there's a real big misnomer. So there's something called the ACE scoring, and it's a questionnaire you can use. And I've had many a discussion with people, because they'll say, oh, that's only for children or adults that have come from poor communities. It's as if it's like over there. Absolutely not, because Chris and I came from two very different backgrounds, and yet we've sat there and they were like, we're so alike. And yet in some, like, I am the woman I am today because I was in care, and I am thankful because that gave me a place of safety. That's not true for for everybody.
Everyone, yeah, everybody's different.
Absolutely.
Everybody's different. I mean, I'm so grateful. So I'm very, very lucky. So like I said, when I say, I don't particularly want to sort of broach the subject because I want to put my head in the sand, because in my bubble, nothing's sort of, these things do not happen. Just as you said, that's something going on over there. And I was adopted as a baby. I was so lucky, 6 weeks I was adopted. So I was taken directly from the hospital. So I had a very loving family. It could have been so very different if I'd got lost throughout the system, which you hear of it so much. But also, from my perspective, where, somebody who hasn't been in, very lucky that I haven't been touched by this, in my head, we think about, missing children. If you believe the media, the only person to ever go missing is probably Maddie McCain.
Oh,
would you agree? There's
absolutely.
A disconnect. Go ahead, Beth. What do you think?
A big disconnect, especially when it comes to sexual and physical assault. So this is where we are both passionate. So I like to try and keep calm so that we're doing it from a place that people can hear, but sometimes it's difficult. Mm-hmm. It is the only crime that I can think of where we blame the victim, and the media does that all the time. They just want fame, especially when they're alleged perpetrator. And we have to say alleged because we live in a society where we're guilty until charged. But we then disbelieve the victim, and the victim has to prove so much more about they are a person of upstanding. So any time you go to make a statement to the police, you hand over your phone, you hand over your social media accounts, you hand over your personal medical records, which includes counselling, therapy. But for the alleged perpetrator, that's not necessarily the same. But we don't do that if someone burgles our house. We don't say, well, what was your locking mechanism? And this is where the myths in the media alter what's actually happening, because we would believe that abuse doesn't happen in the home. And it's not to scaremonger, but there's even, when we say in the home, we're not just talking about dads or stepdads or uncles. We're talking about mothers. We're talking about stepmothers. We're talking, and this is very rarely spoken about, siblings.
Right.
If someone's 5-6 years older, you can be beaten up. And I mean beaten up by a sibling. You can be sexually abused by a sibling, but we don't want to talk about it because what do I do? And it's rabbit in the headline.
I think that is the key. This is why I said to you earlier, do we talk about this? The whole thing is to be positive. But my hope is that anybody listening knows that there is help out there and that there are solutions, and whatever anybody's gone through, that these things can be overcome. And you guys are there to help them through that. So, Chris, do you think there is a disconnect with, what the general public see through the media? We see it as, that these problems might be happening over there, but they're not happening here. And what can be done to change this?
I often have this conversation with myself and just want to pick Joe Public up and shake them, and sort of like, I wonder why people don't actually have these conversations, and why abuse is not spoken about more openly, more freely. Why some parents don't want their children to be taught about safe touch and healthy relationships and things like that at school, because if a child is taught about what abuse actually is, then that child might speak up earlier to a safe person and actually get earlier interventions. But many of us that don't disclose our abuse until we're older, teenagers, adults, older adults, we often don't know that what we're going through is abuse. And when you actually can put a name to it and understand what you've gone through and understand the impact, that's when you can start looking around and to get the help that you need.
Absolutely.
Can I just touch on what Chris is saying there? And that's why I'm so passionate about the A score, because at the age of 10, so I was being sent back home, and I was told 3 nights before. So for 3 nights, I had night terrors when I was in the children's home because I was being sent home to my abuser.
Right.
Now, to the outside world, I should have been really happy. And the people I was living with were absolutely wonderful. They got me out of bed. They reassured me. But they didn't ask any questions. They didn't open the conversation. At the age of 10, I didn't have the vocabulary or the wherewithal to be able to vocalise why I was so upset.
Right.
And this is where I'm passionate about, at least when you open subjects like this, or you take the ACE questionnaire, and if anybody wants a copy, they're more than welcome to contact me.
I'll put a link.
Because the one you get on Google can sometimes not be relevant and a bit misleading, because it's very much in old speak, as if that domestic violence only happens to women. I don't want to go off on that tangent. However, if the subject was open to me in a different way and there was an awareness, I would have known that that wasn't the norm.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? You can't change everything. And we have been able to find our voice and been able to use our story and our experience for conversations such as this to show that please don't keep quiet. But most importantly, part of the reason why I was taken back into care is because some of the neighbours and people around me had the courage, just on an intuition, thinking, I've heard things. I don't know if it's what's happening, but I don't like it. So they picked up the phone and spoke to the NSPCC.
Right, because that's what I was going to touch on, because the reason I did want to have this conversation, I suppose, now with this is because obviously current affairs, we're locked down, COVID. So all this year, there will be, unfortunately, thousands of children locked in with their abusers, no fight for going to school, for seeing any friends. And I just don't even want to begin to imagine what they could be going through. So for anybody out there that maybe has an inkling, like you say, they might just sort of, feel it, they might not have seen anything, but they've got what would you say to people out there if they're, even suspicious of something going on? Because nobody wants to, they might see it as being a grass or anything, but you're looking at the child and about saving a child. What would be the procedure, even if you just wanted to sort of, get something checked out? Go ahead, Bev.
Well, I would say it from both ways. But first of all, I want to just reiterate, this is for children, young people and adults as well, because there is no age definitive here. We're talking from birth to death, okay? So if you're aware of something and it is just a feeling, if you're unable to speak to someone, say at school, because of the changes that are going on around us, pick up the phone, speak to someone like the NSPCC. And the reason why I say that, they will record that. Now, just on your say-so, if we want to put it like that, they may not act, but it's recorded. But if several people do it, then suddenly they've got something to look further at. Also, I would say to anybody, go to a family member. However, that's not right for everybody, because I know several people, and sadly it comes to light, that they'll tell a family member, and the first person they tell is in their own fear and unable to receive that information. And so it gets shut down, they get disbelieved, and then that shuts you up again for longer.
Yeah, so, I mean, that would be so, just from my own thought process, the fear could be, if I'm going to say something, I might put child, woman, man, whatever, in more danger, because if somebody said something, they know, they might accuse them of speaking out. So there's sort of that aspect as well. Is that something to be concerned with, or what would you suggest?
Always, because it all depends on the dynamics of how you're involved with the family as well. For me, if a person came to me and I have had that and they were being abused, first of all, is listen to them, say nothing. Just listen to them, reassure them, and I've even thanked them. Thank you for having the courage to share this.
Yeah, they've got
the hardest part is not to fix it or try and fix it, because you want to pick them up, take them out, and it's reassuring. Thank you. It's also then, what support do you have? Because they may have support.
Right.
We've all been there. It may also be you're the first person they've told, and actually they don't want anything else at the moment. They've told you, but they're coping with it.
A process. Everybody needs a different amount of time. What about you, Chris? What would you say?
I think every adult has a responsibility to believe a child until that child may be potentially disproved. Because when you're a child growing up, and when you talk out so many times and nobody believes you, or they shush you, or they say, stop telling lies, or if you carry on saying that, you're going to upset so and so or whatever, that just silences the child, and can cause a further impact for a lifetime. So as far as I'm concerned, every adult has a responsibility to listen to every child and to respond in the appropriate way for that child. So if they're underage, to actually take some action on behalf of that child if that child does come forwards. If you see something, or you've got a gut instinct about something, or you are not sure, I would do as Bev suggested, and I would report it anyway. You can stay anonymous. You do not need to leave your name. But if you have concerns about a child, then you need to be reporting those concerns, to official bodies. Because you could be the person that saves that, literally to save that child's life. Also for me, it's, even if you've come from a loving, nurturing, caring like family life, that's fabulous. Every child should have that. But we know not all children do have that. And we also know that this lockdown has caused increases in domestic violence. It's shot through the roof, and also child abuse. We know that. We've seen the figures. So much more funding has become available to charities at the moment than ever before to help these people that are being abused, adults and children. So it's about making sure that we as adults, even if we've not been through it, sort of like, going on to Google and looking at what does signs of abuse look like? What could they be? And the fact that children at the moment are not going to school, the fact that children are not seeing relatives or family friends makes it even more harder. However, if, like me, I'm one of 6 children, and we've got 22 children between all of my siblings, and we've got we're quite open talking about this, and we've got a policy whereby we have spoken to our children and said, if you've ever got concerns that you can't speak to mum and dad about, you can go to uncle or auntie and speak to them about whatever it is. So it's about opening up those networks and allowing your child to speak to a safe person, maybe within the family, maybe without the outside of the family, but keeping those communication lines open. And, if you do go on a Zoom call with, I don't know, your child is on a Zoom call with another child, and you notice things, keep your eyes and ears open, because that is how we save children, by being a bit nosy, and as having the fear about reporting someone that you think, oh, I don't want to rock the boat. If there's nothing to hide, okay, if social services knocked on my door right now and said, oh, we've had a report about blah, blah, you know what? I'd go, I'd be really angry, because I know I've not done anything, but their job is child protection. So come in, check it all out, and then go away. Yep.
And I don't mind saying, sorry, Chris, go on.
No, so I'm just like, err on the side of caution, report. Don't not report.
Yeah. Can I just say, as a parent as well, and I don't mind sharing, as a parent, it's, nothing is it's simple. Every child is different. And the more children we have, the more we see that, and they even come through. So we don't know all the answers. And I had a challenging time at one time after my divorce with my son when he was about 13, 14. And he had support at school. And then there was an incident. And the next thing, I had social services call me. They wanted to know some more information. I'm not saying it wasn't upsetting, but do you know what I did say at the end? I said, thank you for listening to my son.
Yeah, right.
Because that's the kind of thing, there was nothing to hide. Do you see what I mean? And they were listening to my son, the kind of thing that we're always, work, and that's our passion. Listen to each other, our children, our young people. And when people say, I don't know how to speak to them because it's a difficult subject and I don't want to put ideas into their mind, you won't, because they see more in films anyway. But what you do is, if they are experiencing it, surely that's worse, not knowing how to come to you.
Absolutely. So basically, you're saying is we've just got to be open and honest and not be afraid of having the conversation, as it were.
Yeah, because we're talking about something at the moment that is very scary, and it's we're talking about a virus which is scary, and we're all united in that discussion, whatever view we come from it. But suddenly it's taken over as if nothing else happens, and suddenly abuse doesn't happen, and sadly it does. And if we don't talk about it, the outcomes are worse than a potential virus.
Absolutely,
I agree.
Well, everything's been brushed under the carpet, hasn't it? A few years ago when the because it was a celebrity, the Jimmy Savile thing come out. It just seems to be they have these spurts of talking about things, and then it all goes quiet as though it never happened, or only in certain circumstances. But like you just said, this is the worry with what is going on about it. Yes, obviously it's an awful thing. We don't want anybody to die at any time from anything, but it happens. But yes, it's not just cancer, heart disease, abuse, domestic abuse, the whole trafficking, the whole thing. Yep. It does feel that we're just not, we've just forgotten. And what is worse?
Well, from a health perspective as well, when you look at trauma in a child, like physical, emotional, sexual abuse, there are long-term health consequences. So the more trauma you experience as a child, the longer it goes on for, you can shorten your actual expected life expectancy by about 20 years. You are more likely to develop a chronic illness. So whilst we're looking at what is potentially dangerous around us, we need to be looking at the whole picture. And there are positives, there is recovery, and it's not necessarily visiting all the trauma, but there is support, and there is support for people. And it's yourself, you've had the courage to open this conversation, Karen, and like you said, this is an area that I don't want to do wrong, and I personally would say thank you for that courage to open it from your point of view, because someone who's not experienced it in any way is fantastic, but it's even better the fact that you want to open this conversation because you'll pass it on to others.
Well, so we just see it happening. We just see it happening in front of our eyes, and it does. Don't get me wrong. I know personally, I've got plenty of people around me that I know that think things have happened in their experiences. So I know it goes on, and it is a case of, well, why aren't we talking about it? Why aren't we talking about the thousands of children that, not just Maddie is the only one in the last well, 15, 16 years, because she would have been the same age as my youngest daughter. And we were in Portugal at the time. But, you know, that's the only, in my memory, that's the only one that I can think of that I've seen on the mainstream media in the last 16 years. Now, I know how many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of children have gone missing since back then. So I don't understand the priorities. Yes, there's a virus. Yes, it's awful, and we don't want anybody dying from it. So we want to do our bit. However, what's more important? Why aren't we discussing it? So, Chris, from the work that you do and from what you see, what is going on? And it's not just out there, is it? It's here in the UK. Where are these missing children going?
Who knows? We do know, you know, again, even for me, some of this stuff can be scary. So if something scares us as a human being, our minds will shut down to it. We don't want to hear it. But where are these children going? So I've had these conversations with people on a worldwide scale with some of the conversations that I've been involved in. And in the UK, it's not so relevant as to how it is in like third world countries where the families literally cannot afford to keep their children. So there's lots of children that lose their parents to diseases day in, day out. And those children are orphans, literally walking on the streets. They get picked up by predators and then they are sexually exploited. There are so many cases worldwide where children do literally just disappear. And we also know that online paedophilia has, again, my not favourite saying, but one that I use regularly, gone through the roof. Online sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, rape and sexual assault of children is absolutely on an all-time high at the moment. So I obviously think that a lot of children are exploited into that horrible sector, if that's what you want to call it. And it's heartbreaking. And the more I research it myself and dig into it and speak to people that are actually on the front line dealing with this, my brain wants to shut down to it, but I know I can't because we've got to do something about it.
Somebody's got to remember. And what do you think? How do you think things are going so wrong? And which systems? How is this even possible in this day and age when they want to do track and trace and they want your details to go and get your eyebrows done, and yet you can't track a child that's just suddenly disappeared? Seems crazy, Beth.
I believe it's because we don't want to listen as a society, as a whole, to our young people. We tell them what to do. So even in our education system, and we can't diversify, we treat every pupil the same. This is what you have to achieve. It's not about how are you, what additional support do you need to be able to learn. We don't look at the basics. Even now, we're looking at, how you can keep someone educated, but hold on. How is that actual child at this moment? How are you dealing? What support are you getting? And we don't listen to our children enough, or our young people, because our young people, they may run away from home. Anyone who's, let's look at the age of like 12, 13, 14, 15. They run away from home because they're not safe. And then somehow they may meet someone who doesn't have their best interest at heart. And so they become trafficked. That's here in the UK. And we think, it doesn't happen here in the UK.
It does,
or, like different conversations, like Seven Oaks in Kent doesn't need a supporters group for survivors for sexual abuse. Why not? Just because it's an aspirational area, why not? This is the UK. And it's because, and I'm going to say it, and it's meant in the true form, is our ignorance and not wanting to go there, the fear. Because like Chris said, we get access to information that we even ourselves have to be very careful how we access it. but we still want the information. And yes, sometimes we do have to think, okay, this week I'm going to really bring it down a little bit because I need to look after myself. And then other weeks we'll get involved in it more. And it's not nice. But unless we're able to acknowledge it, how can we
stop it?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We
have to acknowledge it.
We need to acknowledge it first. It's a sign with anything. It's acknowledging that there is an issue, and there clearly is. And then what can we do to stop it? And why is it happening? I mean, it just seems so crazy in this day and age. From your research, would you say? You've just said, Chris, it's going through the roof. Why do you think? Or do you think, I mean, we know historically it has, things have always happened, but why do you even think things are worse than they were, or where do you think we are with this?
I think it's changing, as I said, the online abuse has really taken off in a really bad way. However, I think just when the alleged perpetrator, a perpetrator, has an opportunity to have power and control over someone that doesn't have the awareness and the knowledge, they will use that opportunity. And I think those opportunities are happening everywhere, especially now, parents are working, or the family members are working. That leaves children open to being online more, being befriended by people, because when they're not getting out with their friendship groups anymore. So I think that the internet opens up a lot of opportunity for these perpetrators to basically hunt children, and children haven't got the awareness and the knowledge and the wherewithal that the person potentially at the end of the chat that they're doing is actually an adult and not a child of their age, for one. But also, as Bev said, there are a lot of children that do run away from home, do run away from care facilities, wherever they are. If they're not happy and they're running away, they will trust an adult, because adults look after children, don't they? And children will always look to someone who they can, befriend, to have someone look after them. So as soon as there's a little bit of trust built up between a child and an adult, that can be abused.
And this is where I want to go. Sorry, Chris.
No, I just don't know if has it got worse? Has it changed? We've always had it, and it's always been prevalent. It's always been endemic in our society. But I think now we're talking about it a lot more. We are actually putting children first, as they should be, rather than, children should be not seen, not heard type of thing. And I think I don't know if it's got worse. I really, truly don't know if it's got worse. I just think that we know more about it and more's come to the surface.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I want to reframe some of it, because I'm very aware how we're talking as well. Because when we talk about grooming, people also assume it's just for the child. Actually, the grooming starts often with the parents. So a favourite auntie or uncle, they start grooming. We see it with, we've seen it in the past with, film stars and musicians, etc. They groom the family, in a different way, build their trust, and then they happen. However, let's give some facts. So, for instance, the NSPCC have a centre in Gillingham, UK. It is one of the most busiest centres, and it is specifically for children that have either phoned Childline or been referred. And what they do, even at a very young age, it's a space for them to be able to go, and their recovery starts then. I've been there. I was able to go there a year ago, and yes, in one way it's daunting, but do you know what? It made my heart sing to know that as a child, even though I was in the care system, I didn't have that conversation open, that they're doing it in certain places. Would I like more? Absolutely, I'd like more. What's also wonderful is to see how they're able to have a voice in different ways that is right for them, musically, creatively, through drawing. You know, they're able to find an outlet that gives them a way to express themselves. And by doing that, that then goes out to their friends. Not every one of their friends will be survivors, but that, you know, 1 in 4 people will be abused. So it gives the 3 out of the 4 people a chance.
That's a terrible statistic, isn't it? That is a terrible statistic. 1 in 4.
1 in 4.
1 in 4.
But also the average age of disclosing is starting to come down. And I say that very slowly, because one of the biggest misnomers about non-recent abuse is people say, well, that happened years ago. It doesn't matter. It does.
Yeah,
it
very
does.
much so. The impact is with you today.
Yeah. But by opening this conversation, even someone listening today, whether you are a survivor yourself or you have doubts about someone else, or someone's come to you, hopefully you found something today that you can take away with you that, you know, even if enable you to ask questions or get support in different ways.
Yeah. Also, I mean, you touched on earlier, you said about, you know, that it can have a physical aspect on people who've gone through trauma. They can reduce their lifespan by about 20 years, so it can affect their whole immune system, I suppose, in a way. Mm-hmm. So let's see, from a mental perspective, is there, again, so, you know, some people, they might see something that happened to them, they might look at it as trivial or too long ago. But do you have anything that, from a mental perspective, if they're going through that could be linked back to that?
I'm a big believer of that. I mean, again, Chris and I
shaking my head, yes.
Yeah.
And we are laughing, and it's important too as well, because you know, I'll put my hands up. You know, I have a lot of lived experience, and yes, I have professional, but it's only my lived experience who has enabled me sometimes to be able to answer honestly and truthfully. When you're talking about trauma as well, there's another word that comes up which we don't want to talk about, and that's suicide.
But we need to.
Absolutely. Can I tell you now, I know more people, even in this last year, that has personally touched me or my family through suicide, and they've lost their life, than the virus has. That doesn't mean to say I don't know people who haven't been very ill, but they've lost their life.
That's terrible. That is the sad fact. I mean, yes, I'm aware personally of people that have unfortunately chosen that route. And you're right. I mean, you know, there's not, this group is more important than that group. But yes, we don't seem to be having that conversation either. No. And it's building up. So what would you see? Because the way I would look at that is, you know, obviously that's the end of the line, but things were happening way back down here. So what could be the early signs for somebody from, say, a mental perspective, that, you know, they should look at having a conversation with somebody or reaching out to somebody to get help? Go for it, Chris.
Want me to go, Bev?
So Chris, you've got to go soon, so I'll allow you. Use up the last time before you go.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing. So if I look back over my life and my health, I can clearly see that the trauma caused all my health issues. So I don't know, being triggered when I'm having a smear, being triggered when I got pregnant, every hospital appointment, giving birth, the whole shebang. I was highly traumatized, and I didn't have the words or the understanding that was all linked to what I went through as a child. But, you know, my muscles, if you look at fight, flight, freeze, flop, friend, the stress response, where, you know, growing up for me in 3 domestic violence households, my body is constantly tight.
Right.
The stress in my psoas muscles, my hip flexors, basically it's been so tight my whole entire life that I've had 2 hip replacements because of the tightness.
So
I
that
had
really is proof that
yeah,
the mind is
yeah,
manifesting through the body already. That
absolutely.
fight or flight, your cortisol must be like whoop, through the roof.
Through the roof, yeah. Constipation issues. I've had 2 operations on my backside. Sorry to be so frank, but this is the reality of it. Dehydration. I wasn't allowed to drink water as a child because I wet the bed, but I only wet the bed because of emotional distress. Yeah. So because she's wetting the bed, let's not give her water. If you don't give her water, then her whole internal system is drying up. So therefore she gets constipated, and she's got decades and decades, years and years of constipation, ended up in surgery. So, and also constipation is caused by tightness in the body as well. So there's just a couple of impacts for you, but I also had a breakdown when I had my son, da-di-da-di-da. So disordered eating, bulimia, oh God. But saying that, I've had all of that, but I've also had happy times and healthy times, you know. So as I said, when you look back, hindsight's a wonderful thing. You can see it clearly, and with the knowledge that you gain, that trauma does cause or can cause blah, 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 you can go, oh my God, so was that really linked to that? Yeah. And then you can do something about it.
Well, that's it. It's all looking for what, okay, well, what can we do? So whatever's happened, the past is the past. We can't change it. But what can we do from today moving forward to create change? What about you, Bev?
So this is when I say mental, neurological, because sometimes what stops people from coming forward is the word, and I don't know, mental health. How else do we communicate? I like to say mental wellness. But there are factual things that happen in trauma or stress that are neurological. So we have an alarm system in our head. And if you go back and look, when our body instinctively, even before we see danger, instinctively, our body feels physically it's in danger, whatever. It may be that it can smell, it can hear, it can just feel. That's, our bodies are built like that to keep us safe. So what happens is straight away the alarm goes off in our brain and we release the adrenaline that enables us to be able to shut down the parts of our body we don't need. So our creative, our proactive thinking, we need to be reactive right here, right now. And if we need to run, all our blood and oxygen goes towards our muscles in our legs to enable us to run. When that happens for a short time, that's good.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Long term, we're not designed to cope with that.
And what happens, we then are unable to shut it off. Our alarm system gets stuck. So we get stuck in what we call the sympathetic mode. We're constantly on alert. Like I told you, when someone tried to teach me meditation, as a child, going to school and trying to learn something. Hold on a minute. I'm trying to take this in. And as a student, that was my coping mechanism. I could study, get lost in it. But anything else, oh my God, you're asking me to stand up. You're asking me to use a voice, like to sing, apart from the fact I can't sing. But, but it's all contradictory. So what happens then is as we get older, we learn to use our coping mechanisms more. So as a survivor, resilience, when they say about teaching children resilience, I personally believe you don't need to teach a child resilience. Children naturally bounce back. We don't give them credit enough as an adult. It seems that when we get to adulthood, we forget how resilient we are as children, how we build our huts in the woods and all the rest of it.
Children are very resilient, but they shouldn't have to be.
They shouldn't have to be. Absolutely. The biggest thing we need to learn is to be able to be vulnerable, to get that balance. And yet, when you grow up knowing that vulnerability equals danger, how do you become vulnerable and you come out of sync? So when we're talking about trauma and coming back to the suicide aspect, when you're in that place that's very dark and you don't want to feel anymore how you're feeling, you think the only option is to quieten your mind in whatever way. And one of the things is, how do we look for signs? They're not always there. It is about asking questions. How are you feeling? It's about instinctively sometimes just touching base and just being there. We can't do it for everyone. It's about able to use that word so that when we say suicide, someone's like, oh, actually, yeah, I need to speak to someone. But the difference is, if someone said to me, I'm having suicidal thoughts, the first thing I say is, okay, so is it your life you want to end, or is it how you feel?
The pain, you want the pain to end.
Yeah, but
They
you're
can't
asking
see
the
a way
question.
out of it. It's
But can you see how you ask the question? Then
yes.
if they say, I want to end my life, the next question I would ask is, how? Now that sounds scary. But by asking that question, you've enabled them a safe space to answer without judgment.
Interesting. Because before, without you saying that, that would petrify. I wouldn't want to bring that question up. But so that's very interesting. Thank you.
When
Bev.
you say how, if somebody says, "Well, I haven't really thought about it," okay. So what is it that you've thought about? Where's this feeling coming from? Now you're not being expected to fix again. A bit like when you hear someone share that they've been abused. It's not about fixing. But if somebody says, well, this is how I think about doing it, and this is what I've put in place, now you know that person can go to A&E, and you can take them to A&E or call a cab, etc. But someone else, what support do you need? Again, what support have you had? What support do you need? And then
this is the trouble. I mean, so for you guys, so thank you for all your sort of tips and suggestions here. So for anybody that is listening, you know, the issue is, and trust me, you know, people think I'm, you know, happy all the time. Trust me, I've been very up and down emotionally. So I know that if people are struggling, then they really are having a hard time during lockdown. And again, because everybody's circumstances are different, you know, some are on their own when they really do not need to be on their own. So round this up, Chris, what would the most important thing you would want somebody out there who maybe is, you know, has gone through some kind of trauma, albeit whether they're in their childhood, more recently, man, woman, whatever, what would you say the biggest thing for them to do, or the biggest tip you can give them for them to reach out for help?
To know that just because we're in lockdown, if you feel unsafe or you feel like you are so distressed, you are allowed to go to somebody and get the help. No matter what, lockdown, it doesn't matter. You leave and you go somewhere safe to get help, whether that is the hospital or a police station or a family member or a friend. You go to a safe place for yourself. That is my biggest thing, is that you are allowed to leave where you are to go and get help and support.
Okay. And you, Bev?
Reach out. Even, you know, whilst people work with me privately, there are some people that reach out to me that won't necessarily work with me, but they want to be signposted somewhere. They want to know that they can ask a question. They could do that, you know, they can contact me, they can contact Chris. I know, Chris, I'm speaking on your behalf, but we're both on Facebook, we're both on Instagram. You can private message, you know, or if you don't want to come to either one of us, you can contact your doctor. There's lots of different people you can contact. And if you're concerned for someone and you don't know how to approach them, that's where social media can really work, because find some local numbers. You know, in Kent have their own number for mental health that you can ring. You've got the Samaritans, you've also got Mind. You can put those up on your wall, and even though it may not be that you're specialist in that area, by putting those numbers up, you're allowing someone to think, oh, I can either ring that number or I can message that person and say, help me contact someone.
Awesome. Ladies, thank you so much for your time. I really hope that if anybody is out there that is suffering, please don't suffer in silence, and please do reach out. So Thursday's show will be a keto coffee with Karen. So we'll be going to be focusing on emotional eating. And if you're anything like me, That's certainly been an issue for me before Christmas. Now it's all new, and I'm back exercising and everything again. I know you are too, Chris. So guys, thank you for listening. And next week we will actually be discussing the immune system. So tune back in then. Thank you.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.